Welcome to another edition of the podcast known as Blending the Family. I am your host, Tommy Maloney. Welcome to episode 177. And my guest is somebody who has become a really close and dear friend. Keith K.L. Belvin. Keith K.L. B-E-L-V-I-N joins the podcast episode 177. And I'll tell you, I'm very intrigued by Keith because one of his books that he's written is called From Gigolo to Jesus. You got to get that book. It's a great book. It's a great story. And let's see, hold on. I have all these notes all over, and I'm trying to figure out some kind of order, but you're out of order. This whole podcast is out of order. How you doing? You doing good? I'm hearing back home in my area of Colorado, it's extremely smoky. So to all first responders, thank you. For essential workers, thank you. I am shocked that I haven't seen anything here in California, but we're going to move on. We're going to just have... I'm tired. I'm sorry. I am just so tired. I had some technical issues trying to put this episode together, and that's the life of a solopreneur. As a solo artist, is you're in charge, and that's it. So you're doing good? Okay, that's good. We're going to talk a lot in this episode about coaching and why it's important to have a coach, and a couple of things that Keith brought up, and I'm finding a interesting purpose why I'm here in California, even though it's for the dreaded day job. I scheduled my week this week to be able to see some friends, and one of the first people I saw was a good friend of mine named, I call him Pastor Tony. Tony was the minister at my wife Ann and our wedding back in 2012. And I hadn't seen Tony in years. Well, I think the wedding. Honestly, I think it was the wedding was the last time I saw him. And that's over 8 years ago. And I had a blast with Tony. And I'm finding, again, there's a purpose why I'm here. And it's not just for the dreaded day job. It's a higher calling. And I seriously mean that. Tony and I spent 5 hours talking, reconnecting, and I don't think it's a secret, but he's been writing a book, and hopefully that book will be coming out sooner than later. And one of the things I felt why I was called to be here this week is to encourage him to get that book out. Majority of it's written, so you might as well do it, right? Right? Anyway. And then I saw a good friend of mine, Freddie, who he and I worked together at the same dreaded day job, and it was just a beautiful time together. And catching up with people you haven't talked to in person for years, it's very cathartic. It really is. And I just had a wonderful time with Freddie, and we talked about some of his life goals, and I'm like, just go do it. You're young enough, just go do it. So hopefully he's going to be making a trip. So then I was hoping tonight, Thursday night, to see my buddy Dakota, who we work for the same company, and it's just nice to be able to reconnect with people. And I know as much of being an introvert, and as my wife kids, I am a really good hermit. I play a great hermit at home. But as I've gotten older, not wiser, just older. There are times where it's really nice to see people, and it just, for me, seeing, Tony and Freddie, and even if hopefully I was going to see Dakota, but you can pick up where you left off, and that's what I did with Tony and Freddie. And so coaching, I find that I love helping other people, and I'm going to stick a plug in there of, please go to the website Blending the Family and sign up for a free consultation. I would love to help you, because tonight I had a conversation with one of my coaching clients, Jamila, and I love it. I love just trying to help. And as I'm listening and they're talking, I'm taking notes and figuring out how best I can serve them. And so I love, I do. I love hearing people's stories and hearing how where they want to go in life. And so I just want to keep helping more people. And so with Keith on this episode, he was talking about a friend of his from Italy, and that would be Brian. And you can find Brian at BGDT Coaching. That's BGDT Coaching, okay? And I also need to mention Otis. Otis makes an appearance in the background on this episode with Keith, and so it reminded me of the days of Duke. So where are we at? Website. Go to the website. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about that. So there you go. Something I did this week, which was a lot of fun. One of my past guests on the podcast, Taj Deshawn, and Taj, he doesn't text me. He sends me voice text messages, and I love it. And so I started actually with Taj, just having some fun with him, telling him I really appreciated his text. And then I took that idea and sent my son a text. And the only way I know how to do this is with the iPhone. So I don't know if you can do it on a Droid, but I got to, and I've used it before, but I wanted to use it in a different way, as far as spreading some joy and just sending a message to my son Connor. And I don't know if he appreciated it or not, but it's fun. And so my suggestion to you is, if you can, be it an audio or even a video text, just send somebody and do it for a week. Just do it for like 5 different people in 1 week, and just send them just a message saying how much you appreciate them, or I hope you're having a good day, or I hope your socks match. I don't know. Like I said, I'm a little tired. So Keith K.L. Belvin is on this podcast, and one of the things I also want to mention that he picked up from his coach Brian, and we also mentioned our business coach, Glenn P. Brooks Jr. That's Glenn P. Brooks Jr. You can find him on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, and he has the hashtag we all need some help. And actually, if you've ever met me, I have these wristbands. So I have one that says pay it forward. I have one that says I am grateful. I have one that says bleed hockey. I have one that says what's important now. And I used to have one up until Tuesday that said we all need some help, from Glenn P. Brooks Jr. And I gave mine to Tony. And so that my point of this episode is about coaching and how we do need help, and we all can so with Keith, his hashtag is "We Can Fix This," and if you've had a rough life and you need a pause, and then, all right, how do I get out of this? Keith is a crisis specialist, and so that's why his hashtag is "We Can Fix This." And so between Keith and Brian, they came up with uh, kicking with compassion. So sometimes you need to be kicked with some compassion, and so there are times where I definitely need to be kicked in uh, where the good Lord split you, and have a little compassion. So there you go. All right, I think that's about it. I've talked way too much, and I'm tired, and I need to finish putting this podcast together. So we had a discussion with Keith K.L. Belvin. Check out the show notes to find him. He'll talk about how you can find him as well throughout the podcast. But anyway, super excited about talking with Keith. Keith and I met through this cohort, this group coaching that Glenn put together, and so Keith and I just connected, and it's a beautiful thing. And so I think to end this podcast is what Terry Crews says, and this is what coaching is all about. It's your success is my success. And so on this episode of 177, here is Keith K.L. Belvin, crisis specialist, book publishing guru, author, and all-around great guy. Quite honestly, Keith, they really are inspiring, and I love how you talk from the heart.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. No, that's the one part of this game that's easy for me, simply because as a former educator, and that's how I was in the classroom. And I don't deal with rules and restrictions too well. I like the organic part, and it's hard because we become a society of so many restrictions. But I just simply try to whatever comes to mind, and I've always said if they don't like it, delete me.
Well, so you're saying you're a rule breaker or a teacher?
I have always been a nonconformist. My wife jokes about it all the time. She said, "Do you have to be a rebel about everything?" I'm like, yes. If everybody goes right, I'm going to go left just to see why everybody is not going that way. So, and it gets me in trouble often, but I'm okay with it. I enjoy it. Somebody got to wear the black hat. Might as well be me.
Why not? And you look sexy in a black hat.
I'm trying to tell you, folks need to understand that.
Well, I'm so excited to have you here. I took listening to your video today. I wrote down a ton of questions, and we're just hopefully going to have some fun. Is that okay with you, Keith?
I'm ready to go. Listen, this is what I enjoy doing this. Interviews I love because I love when I don't know what the questions are. So fire away.
And here's the funny thing. Start with your video today. Again, kidding about Wellness Wednesday, which was ironic because my wife and I have been very, very, I don't know what the word is other than pops in my head, is religious, as far as we've been getting up every day. We have so Otis needs to go outside, and just taking him outside to the backyard isn't enough. So he is really weird because he will only walk with the both of us. If one of us takes him, he won't go far, maybe 3 houses. And this morning I didn't sleep well. We have a new bed. My back just does not like it. And I told my wife, I said, unfortunately I have to take today off. And she's like, that's fine. I'll take Otis. And sure enough, Otis didn't go very far. But going back to, your video today, you talk a lot about not just, it was tongue in cheek as far as Wellness Wednesday, but the main theme from today was don't give up. And, as somebody in your situation, as a crisis specialist, as somebody who, and we're going to talk about the Gigolo to Jesus book, because I am so fascinated by that when it comes to not just, we can say big picture life, we hone it down to, like you were saying in your video today, talking about, staying in shape or getting in shape. Once it gets hard, we do give up. But it also comes to relationships too, where if relationships get hard, we'll give up. But there's a caveat. There are times where sometimes you do have to give up. You do have to get that divorce. Your thoughts?
Oh yeah, I think, and I'm so glad you said that, because actually I agree. I tell people I'm happily divorced and happily married. And they look with that confused look like, what? And I go, yes, I'm happily divorced and happily married. I'm happily divorced because it took the divorce for me to learn what I needed to be a good husband in the second marriage. And I apologize often to my first wife because I didn't know how to be a good husband. So she never got the benefit of this, Keith. So I have to apologize. And so I'm happily divorced because I learned so much from failing that it allowed me to go forward with what I do now. Also, in general, I just got finished reading a Seth Godin book on the dip, where he talked about when to quit. And, he was saying that you hear everybody say don't quit. But in actuality, he was saying that quitting is strategic when you understand that you just can't accomplish something in a particular direction, that it is best to quit before you waste all your resources and everything else. And so for me, it's just something that I have taken into consideration what needs to be done going forward. And you got to be comfortable with letting some things go and be comfortable with the mystery of what you don't know as you're moving in that direction. I think that's what scares so many people, is not so much the letting go, it's letting go and feeling comfortable with whatever the new thing is going to be, even though they don't have any connection to it yet.
What did you learn going from your first marriage to your second marriage? What the new and improved Keith that your second wife was able to get versus the first marriage, your first wife?
That you can't be a good husband and when you're cheating.
That's a good point. Okay.
You can't. Also, it's but no, but that's real. But
That's real. Yeah.
it's a matter of, if you don't know yourself, then you don't know what you are asking in a partner. So with the failures of my first marriage, what I understood I needed was somebody who understood me. And I asked for that. I actually prayed for that more than I did someone to love me. I was like, because I knew my brain works in a different way. And I knew I moved in a different way. And my mother was the one who told me years ago, you don't have to get married. Because I got married because I had one child. And then when my girlfriend got pregnant, it was like, okay, let's get married. I thought it was the honorable thing. And again, that's a game I was playing with myself, because how could you be honorable when you're still out doing the nasty and negative things? But this is what men do. We try to justify our existence in one area while not even acknowledging negatives in another area. And the one thing I had to learn moving forward was I had to grow up. And it didn't happen right away, because my wife and I had been together 20 years. We'd been married 13. But the first 3 to 4 years, everything, if you ask her, was perfect, except I was not monogamous. And then once I had my coming to Jesus moment, and it was time to try to fix things. Well, how do you now go home and fix something that is perceived one way when it's not? And I had to figure what that was going to look like. And so to answer your question, and in the best way, is that I matured in a lot of areas, and I understood that I had more maturing to do in other areas. And I was lucky enough to have chosen someone who was strong enough to withstand the brunt of the pain that comes with personal, physical, emotional, and spiritual transformation.
Your book, Gigolo to Jesus, and you talk
Mhm.
about, and I saw this in one of the videos you sent me, is, and you could definitely go into more detail about it, but it seems like it was your awakening, your spiritual awakening, when you were in the hotel and you were waiting for this gal who said she
Mhm.
wasn't showing up, and it just seemed like you finally realize, I need to stop doing this. Can you talk about that? Talk about also, Keith, where the title of the book also came from. A great title, and I know you have a publishing company, so kudos to you for recognizing a great title in a book.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so let me do the title first. Let me go. Let me do that first. From Gigolo to Jesus simply came. My wife and I were talking, and I had already did my poetry book called The Man in Transition, and I wanted to show in poetry form how a man can transform his life. So my wife and I were sitting and talking, and then she said, "You know, you need to forget poetry because you're always telling your story of how you changed anyway. You need to tell the whole story." So we were joking about it, and I said, "Don't nobody want to hear from a gigolo who's now, trying to change his life and work his way to Jesus." And we thought about it. We said, So I said, you know what? She actually had the original idea. She said, Gigolo to Jesus is kind of cool. And I said, that would be kind of cool. So we settled on From Gigolo to Jesus. And I caught some pushback because folks were like, oh, if you just change the Jesus part, I'm not changing anything. It is what it is. You either rock with it or you don't. Okay, now the story, the actual story itself, it was my pain with myself. I was in a bad place internally where every cheater hopefully gets to a point where just the dirt and the grime of how they're living their life starts to fill their insides up. So when that night happened, I had the perfect plan. My girlfriend, now wife, was in New York. I'm in South Jersey, so I'm a good 300, 400 miles away, a good couple hours away. I got the perfect plan. I'm good. I got the hotel room. Everything is straight. And I'm waiting on a young lady who I had already got caught cheating with, so there was no reason to be with her other than just being nasty. Okay. So I'm sitting in the room. I got the condoms on the nightstand. I have everything that a player needs in place. I got the perfect plan. I got the condoms. I got the room. I am good. All I need is the partner. So she said, I'm on my way. So I'm super excited. And then about 15 minutes later, she said, my stomach's bothering me. I'm going to take something. I'll be there. Okay, no problem. 15 minutes turned into 45 minutes. And I'm like, what's going on? She's like, I really don't know. My stomach is really bothering me. So after about an hour, and she said, baby, I may have to go to the ER because I don't know what's wrong. I didn't hear none of that. All I heard is, I'm not showing up. And all I heard was, I can't have my way. You better get your behind here to this hotel and let me do what I planned on doing. And again, he just wasn't coming. So now, like any spoiled child, I sat in the room and I'm rolling through my phone trying to figure out who lives in South Jersey or Delaware or Philadelphia that I can get to drive or get out of their way to come see me. Didn't happen. So I'm sitting there and teleministry was on the television. And I always tell folks when I tell this story, no player is going to be sitting in a hotel watching teleministry while he's about to get into something nasty. So I have no idea how it was on the television. I don't remember turning the channel to any of that. I don't remember any of that. All I remember is for the next 2 hours, 4 different pastors in their half an hour block spoke to a different aspect of my life. With the last one who had called out my age at that time. And I remember my grandmother saying that nothing happens by coincidence. And the sadness and all that darkness that I speak of that was inside of me came to the forefront because when you have triggers and you have emotional triggers and that emotion is freed from the place that you've been trying to hide it, it becomes overwhelming. And so at that point, sitting on the edge of the bed, I just felt like I was on the verge of depression with everything that just spilled forward. I got on my knees on the floor and I always knew God. I wasn't a man of faith like I am now, but I always had a presence. I always understood it. I came up in a house around it. But of course, I never embraced it like I do now. And I literally was emotional. And I said, okay, God, this is exactly what I said. Okay, God, what is it that you want? Because obviously I can't do the things that I want to do. I have the things that I want to do. And like a petulant child, I'm mad that I couldn't sin. But the emotion of being a weak man spilled out. And I had the nice Jeep. I had the master's degree. I had the wonderful job as an educator. I had the wonderful wife and girlfriend at the time in New York. So why was I so unhappy? Because I had never dealt with me. And at that moment, the voice that came to me was, you need to fix home. You need to fix you and fix home. And the funny thing about that night is when I got up off the floor, sat on the edge of the bed, and I called my grandmother, who was still alive at the time. And I said, hey, Grandma, I think I just heard the Lord's voice. What do I do? Now, the country woman that she is, she said, well, do whatever he told you to do and leave me alone, and hung up the phone. And so I called a friend, a fellow educator, mentor of mine. He's slightly old. I think Mike is about 7 or 8 years older than me, who had always reminded me that he overcame his drug addiction through his faith. I called him and said, Mike, I hate to call you this late, man, but I think I heard the Lord's voice. I don't know what to do. He said, well, brother, I appreciate you calling. I'm glad to hear that. Tell you what, when you come back to New York, come by the church. We'll sit down, we'll talk, because now you got to make some moves. And that was the start. And that was the moment that I gave in to what I believe to be the Lord. Now, some people argue and say it might be your conscience, whatever it is, call it whatever you want. I know that something inside of me spoke in such a firm way that it was different than anything that had spoke to me before, whether it was my conscience or whatever you want to call it. I know I believe in the Holy Spirit. I believe in a higher power. I just knew I felt differently, and I knew it was time to try to do something differently. And that's just the start. The journey doesn't end. That's where it starts. And that's where the real hard work begins. So that's how I got on the path to transformation.
Well, I think it's very apropos because you're speaking today about addressing it. And it seems that you had the wherewithal to address it right then and there. Number one, reaching out to your grandmother. Number two, reaching out to a mentor of yours saying, I need help. I'm done.
Yeah.
How can others, and I'm trying to formulate this question is, how can we address things like that? Is there a process? Is there, something to help others who are struggling? In your situation, being unfaithful, but at the same time, we have other types of struggles. Like you talked about, you use your video today about, don't give up if you are trying to get on a healthy way or build a business. Don't give up. How can we address it? What is it that we need that will help us break through?
That's a great question. And so, I'm glad you asked me that, because here's the thing. I say to, especially the kids that I work with children, I work with couples, I work with singles, and you have to deal with all a little bit different, but there is a similar path that I always place the people that I work with on, and I explain to them. I can't carry the rock that you're under, but I can help lift it for you. And sometimes I can hold it for you while you get yourself together. So what that means is, the first thing that anybody has to do is acknowledge that they need help. That's what you heard me say today, is that you have to acknowledge that you need help. Because once you acknowledge it, well, now you either got to lie to yourself again. And when I mean acknowledge it, I mean admit, God, I need assistance, whether it's business, whether it's weight, whatever it is, I need help. And as our coach, Glenn P. Brooks, says all the time, we all need some help. Well, he's 100% correct, because once you acknowledge that you need help, that's the first breadcrumb. Because then the very next question is, where do you get the help from? Next breadcrumb. Because once you go out and search, the help that you need is out there, but you have to put the work in to get there. Now, the one thing that I've come to learn as a man of faith is that when you put the work in, people will gravitate to you to assist you once they see that you're serious. It may not come before that. And you may start thinking, that's why today when I said don't give up is because it may seem like, oh, ain't none of this mattering, but it is. And so for what I found is that once you acknowledge what's wrong and once you seek out help, now here's the biggie. Once you have asked for help, shut your mouth and let the help do what it does. You cannot go to the doctor and say, oh, my back is killing me, then tell the doctor how he's going to treat your back. You have to wait until the doctor tells you what treatment that he suggests. And if you don't agree with it, you can have a conversation, but you let the doctor be a doctor. So once you ask for help, let the help be put into play. Now you can start to go from there. Now you can start to repair. Now you can start to see and ask questions. And now we're working that rock. And I say that rock has to be lifted up a hill. But here's the promise that I make everybody. I promise you this. No, I can't carry it, but I can hold it for you. But I promise that each step you take to the top of this mountain, that rock will get smaller. The thing is, it will not get smaller till you get further up. But right here, it's going to seem tremendous. It's going to seem like it can't be done. It's going to seem like, oh my God, no one's ever gone through this type of whatever that is. And you can fill in the lines that you want. And the answer is going to be not true. Other people have gone through it, gone past it, and come back to it. But either way, you can make it. My job is just simply to hold my candle up in the darkness that you have until your candle reignites. Then my job is to walk with you with my candle and your candle and all this light to get you in the process of moving out of the darkness. And once you're there, then it's time for me to move on, only to show up if you need me, if you've now started to fall backwards. Because once you've gotten there, you don't need me. You're good. And I can move on and I'm here if you need me. But that's the thing, is that we got to get you to admit that you're sitting in darkness. There's people sitting in darkness thinking it's okay. It's not that bad. It's not that dark. I can't see my hands and my feet or anything, but I'm okay. No, you're not. So that's where I come in, and hopefully it makes sense to anybody listening, because I think the biggest thing that we have is we have to be comfortable with that we don't know what's going to happen. We know the past because we're reliving it. The pain that we have is because of things that happened behind us. Are we bold enough to put that to the side and say, let me step out into this new future with some assistance? And that's what I do. I offer that assistance.
Well, let me ask you this: as in your experience as a specialist, how do you get through the men that just don't want to ask for help? Their ego is too big and saying, "Oh, I don't need help." That's a weakness. What do you say to them?
Okay, this is going to sound somewhat offensive. No, it's not. Here's what it is, and it's real simple. If I throw you the life preserver and you throw it back into the boat, I don't throw it back in. Because as you heard me say, you have to acknowledge that you need help. Because there's always somebody in need of assistance. And if I waste time trying to save somebody who does not want to be saved, I am allowing other people to drown. So what I say to men, who can be very difficult to work with, you either are going to allow me to assist you, or you have to figure it out by yourself. And I'm not going to lose any sleep either way, because there's somebody else who needs my help right now. And I draw that line in the sand, because what happens if you jump in the water with somebody who is panicking? Even if you are a skilled lifeguard, what can happen?
They're going to take you down with you.
Exactly. So what's one of the first things that the lifeguard is screaming as he's coming to the person? Calm down. I'm coming to help you. But the lifeguard has to keep themselves into the mindset that if this person doesn't, I can't put myself in that position where I could go. So what I do is, however it is brought to me, that's why I always tell folks, they go, could you talk to my husband? Of course I can. But does your husband want to talk to me?
Exactly.
It's not me talk. I can talk to anybody. But do they want to speak to me? Now, children is a little bit different, because with children, we are the stewards of our children. We are the persons responsible for them. So you may have to invite me in to speak to your child, because the child may not know that they need my help. So children get a special place with me simply because I don't fault them for what they don't know. But grown men, oh, listen, you got to make a choice, bro. And whatever that choice is going to be, you have to live with it. Now, once you invite me to the table, well, then I'll take the wheel and we go from there. And I'll fight you for the wheel once you bring me in. But you got to want me to fight with you. Now, if you're not ready for that, then go ahead, drive it off the cliff, and I'll tell everybody, don't go this way. Somebody just went off. We're going to go around that way.
Well, I remember years ago, I was speaking with Mark Sanborn, who is an international speaker, author, and he was kind enough to give me an hour of his time. And that's where he was asking me, well, who do you think your target audience is? And I, men. He goes, all right, so if you're putting a workshop together about relationship or divorce, you're going to have 0 men show up because it's the ladies that bring the men to those events. And I'm like,
that's it.
I get it now.
That's it. That's it. That's my target audience right there. You just said it. That's my target client. Women between the ages of 40 to 60, maybe 65 and maybe 35. But if I'm 0 in 40 to 60, who are in relationships with men that need some assistance and married with some men that maybe need some help, dealing with baby fathers who maybe need some help or sons who seem to be off kilter. That's my target because I can speak their language because I've seen that from all the angles that they're dealing with. Also, it is them who are going to speak life into the men to show up. You need to go talk to him because I can't do this no more. All right. My wife said I should speak to you. Well, come on. And it's okay. Why? And what did you hear me say the day before? Men, listen to your wives.
Yes. I am reminded of that every morning.
Right. But you know what? Listen, if you look at it spiritually, and it's real simple, because I also try to make the spiritual aspect of things very palatable for those who are anti-religion. I say, that's fine, be anti-religion. I'm pro-faith because the faith guides a lot of what I do, but I'm not going to take my Bible out and beat you over the head with it as I'm talking to you. That's not necessary. And I get mad at a lot of my Christian brothers and sisters who can't seem to function without rattling off 75,000 scriptures, and the person's looking at them like, I didn't ask to go to church. No, you didn't. But at the end of the day, the Bible says a man was not built to be alone, and God created a wife, but he made the wife from the man. Now, whether you believe it or not, that has nothing to do with it. Look at the overarching concept. 1, men shouldn't be alone. 2, a helpmate. But you cannot, goes back to what I said before, you can't have someone help you if you don't let them. See, I bring up, and I brought it up the other day when I said, listen to your wives, just look at the three slain civil rights leaders, Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X. These men were out against insurmountable odds, knowing that their lives was going to be in danger for what they were trying to do in the country in the 60s. Okay. But yet they still found time to create children. They chose 3 powerful women because, you know how you know they're powerful? Because after the men were assassinated, all 3 women went on to greatness while still raising a family on the heels of an assassination of the male figure in the family. And all of the kids turned out pretty good. That's because once you choose the right partner, and once you allow yourself to be able to be with someone who wants to help you, women have an innate ability that they can make things happen from things that we just as men can't see, but women need us as well. And when that partnership is really grinding in the right way, there's nothing that's impossible to the two of them. But most of us have never seen that or even had it explained to us in that way. So we don't look at marriage in the light that it should be in.
Have you always been this transparent, Keith?
Yes, but it was all about me when I was younger. So I would use this to get past women's defenses to get their panties. So yes, I was always this smooth, hence the title From Gigolo to Jesus.
Well, and I didn't say smooth. I just said transparent.
Well, that's what it is that the reason why it's smooth is because truth always throws people for a loop. They're not expecting it. And what makes me smooth is that it comes off so natural that people go, he can't be telling the truth. Yeah, I am. I used to wear, when I was out cheating, when things that got bad with my ex-wife, I used to wear my wedding band around my neck. And I took my wedding band, her wedding band, she gave it back to me because we were pretty much done. And rule number 1, if you're going to say, I don't want to be with you no more, don't say it in January and you don't have anywhere to live until April. That's going to be a horrible 4 months. I'm just going to put that caveat out there. But when I was out, I'd had her wedding band and my wedding band around my neck. Oh my gosh, was that such a pimp tool? Because I literally say, I'm in a very bad situation. Look, my wife even gave me her wedding band back. I just don't have anywhere to live, and I'm not trying to come live with you. So I just don't even want to talk about marriage. I'm just out trying to enjoy myself for the night. Now, here's what I just did. Let's not talk about my home situation. I just told you I ain't trying to come live at your house. I'm just trying to have fun. And because I put that out there, you make whatever decision that you want. One of the smoothest tools on the planet was that I had the optical illusion in the wedding ring and in a line that fit what I was saying. And at least keep you in the conversation with 50% of the women that you meet.
Interesting. I don't know where to go from there. Since like you, I'm married, so I don't see me. Yeah, moving on. Let's talk failure. So how can people bounce back from failures? Be it relationship, be it maybe somebody came to you, they published a book for you, and it just didn't sell. How can we get through failures?
Oh man, another great question. There's multiple ways, but I'll try to break it down in the simplest terms because I think we tend to overanalyze some basic things. I'll give you what my grandmother told me when I first got separated and came back home, and I couldn't believe that I was back home after a failed marriage. She was like, "Cry tonight," and then she said, and pardon my language, get your ass up and start living your life the next day. And I was like, when you first hear that, it's like, I don't really need it. But then I caught myself because my grandmother didn't have the education I had. So I had to take it in for a second. And then she came back and said, we didn't raise you for no woman to break you. Now you got to decide what that's going to look like. And I can't help you there. But you get those tears out tonight and then you figure out what your plan is going to be. Because if you really want to get back at her, be successful. So over the years, what that has morphed into when I'm trying to help people who have failed or going through failures or just in the midst of just the effects of it is consider why you failed. That's the first thing. Consider it, embrace it. You failed. Okay. Now, why did you fail? And then whatever that why is, pull that forward and then ask yourself a question. Do I want to go back and try it again, or do I want to go in a new direction? Because that's the first thing. We got to figure out what we're going to do. So you first have to look at why you failed and put it in a sports analogy. If a team loses a Super Bowl because of a bad play, they don't break the team up. They go, oh my God, if we could have just not had that one play. So they bring everything back because they realize that failure was just because of, well, they'll even call it an anomaly. But if a team has reached that point where they don't think there's nothing else that can be done, well, what do? They break that team up. Because at this point, they don't believe that there's nothing else that can be done with that team. So the only way any one of us can figure out what we're going to do from a failure is to first sit down and analyze what caused the failure and be brutally honest. And then whatever that brings to the table, sift through it, take what you need, and then move forward. So now either restart it and go after it again or break it up and bring in whatever new pieces are necessary or choose a whole new direction and just start all over. But either way, we cannot change. That failure will be there. That grade is on your record. It is what it is. But now the question becomes, what do you get from it? What was learned from it? And that is where the pure transformation starts if a person gives into that part.
Yeah, I remember after my divorce, I wish I had your grandmother's advice because it took me a good 6 months to get my act together. So I always remember Zig Ziglar talking about how if you're down, time to stay down and then move forward. And I just listen to your grandmother and Zig Ziglar.
Yeah. You know, it is the elders in their simplistic thinking was because even the most influential speakers, Zig Ziglar and many others, when you look at where they're coming from, they simplified things. And then once the work was started, they had other simplifications that when you pile it up, you have a whole book. Like I look at the art of war, right? Sun Tzu says, if the sides are even, fight. If you have the advantage, fight. But if you don't have the advantage, run off or basically retreat until you've gotten more knowledge or you more troops or whatever. Okay, so he's simply saying if you can beat the guy, beat him up. But if it's even fight, go ahead and fight. But if you know you're going to take a loss, man, why would you stay there and put your troops through that? Run off. And if we simplify a lot of the messages that we get and put it in a palatable way, well, then we have people that are in our masterminds that do not have to be on this planet who can guide us if we allow it. Too often, we want the person to be viable right here and now. I want to be able to touch them. No, I have people that are in my mastermind who are no longer alive, but they guide what I do because their knowledge is still here. Malcolm X is one of them because he's no longer here, but his transformation helps me. Why? Because he made 4 major transformations in his life, and each one required a new focus as well as cutting loose who was connected to that previous transformation. And he understood it was necessary even at the end when he knew it could possibly cost him his life. But his search for truth put him in a situation where it was like, okay, if I'm gonna die because I believe in what I'm trying to do. So if you'll stand for anything, you'll die for anything. And that's the things that we tend to forget is we want certain mentors, not realizing that the world is filled with them if we just sit down and read.
Well, the first thing that popped in my mind is a lesser known book by Napoleon Hill was Interviewing the Devil.
Okay.
And in that book, he talks about how your mentors don't necessarily have to be living.
There you go.
It's like you said, they can be in books. Napoleon Hill talked about how he would imagine being in a room with a lot of the people he wished were alive for him. You know, he would talk about the greats, and you're so right there, Keith, is that we do get caught up in, you know, again, we'll give up easily because, oh, I didn't find the mentor. I didn't find, you know, the right coach. They're not always going to be physically there. I mean, you're talking about like Malcolm X. He's gone, but he has written words. There's videos of him. There's, you know, things that you can embrace. Even if that person is not in the same area as you, you can find written words to help you not give up.
Exactly. And you know what I found when you do it that way? Because I have a friend, we talk every 4, 5, 6 weeks. He's over in Italy, and we schedule calls to talk with each other just to uplift each other. And he always jokes about kicking me with compassion because I need that set of eyes sometimes when he'll remind me, like he'll actually remind me to take a deep breath and look at some of my accomplishments because I'm not a person that normally does that. So a lot of times he'll say, hey, can I kick you? And I go, uh-oh, what you gonna tell me? And then it's really to slow me down just to say, you know what, give yourself some credit for what you've done because sometimes I push myself harder than I need to. But he was one of the people that when we sat down and talked, and we were just talking about building a mastermind. I remember I had made a list of all the people that I wanted to have in my mastermind. And he was the one that joked and said, you know, you don't need half of those people. And I was like, really? And then as we discussed it, that was what we actually talked about, is that I had a couple who were no longer here. He said, well, if you had your choice of anybody in the world in these particular areas, and we tore the list up, and he said, okay, who would you like to have here? And who would you like to have here? And all of a sudden what I found was that I tend to gravitate to folks who are no longer here. And so that's what I started to do, is because what I found is when you have to sit with, say, a Napoleon Hill, a Malcolm X, Sun Tzu, or anybody else that you choose that you cannot have that conversation with, you are forced to have to read deeper, listen deeper. You are forced to really get into it if you're going to pull some of the essential things that they're trying to say, simply because you don't have the ability to say, hey, Mr. Hill, can I ask you this? So you need to get an idea where he's coming from. So you can't do it in 1 or 2 words. You can't do it in 1 or 2 chapters. Hell, you might not be able to do it in 1 or 2 books, depending on which books you read. So what starts to happen is now you read the books, but you also start to read other people's descriptions of what the words have done to you. And all of a sudden those breadcrumbs start to fall because you know what you're coming to these individuals for. But all of a sudden in listening and paying attention, and now that you're in a deeper state of being, all of a sudden now they speak to you tremendously. And I carry that over to the people that I speak to now. And you hear me say in the videos, I don't know who this is for. I just know that I need to show up because somebody may hear this that I may never meet. And it may be long after I'm gone and somebody comes in one of my videos and go, I don't know who this big man was, but I dig him because he's speaking my language and we may never meet, but I put it out there. And that's how I look at it. So that's what I do when I'm looking at people who are no longer here. You have to give more of yourself to get what they're giving because you don't have that back and forth. So you got to almost create the dialogue inside your head, inside your spirit.
Well, I'm going to go back to, your friend over in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that our coach, Mr. Glenn P. Brooks Jr., always starts off our calls with are the small wins.
Exactly.
And we forget that. We don't realize, we always think that we have to score the touchdown. No, there's going to be the running back whose specialty is to get that yard. That's all you need. You get that 1 yard, you got another down.
Yep.
And it's funny because when I've coached other people, that's part of my vernacular. Tell me a small win. But when it's reversed on you, when you're asked, what is your small win? You sit there and go, I don't have any.
I remember you said that the other day, and then you wound up having like 4 before you even got to the next couple minutes.
It all came down to because my wife bought me a new chair.
Yes, there it is.
Yeah. And from there, it was this. And then I'm like, you got me, Glenn. You got me.
And that's the beautiful thing of when you do have another set of eyes that can help. But you just said something that really just resonated with me, and it just really jumped out at me when you said it. So it's very organic. When you talked about everybody wants to score the touchdown, but you got to work your way down the field. I just thought about something. If you score too quickly, the other team has not only time to come back and score, which means they can come back and steal the victory from you. There's still a whole lot of game to play. Whereas when you can chop up a clock, when you methodically work your way down a field, not only does that demoralize your opponent, you leave them with no time left. So not only have you just basically beat them into a position where now they're frantic, you put yourself in an even stronger position. And so that's what I mean by when you learn to listen and learn to allow what's being said to you to marinate and learn to really hear things that are activated inside your head were not there before the person started talking, before you started reading. And all of a sudden now, if I was to sit down and write that, now let's say I wanted to write or do a video, or let's say I wanted to do a seminar, now I can talk about the difference between quick strikes or methodical and whatever it is. Now I've given myself something to work with simply because I took the time out to listen to you, but to actually allow what you said to get past just my ears. As I used to tell my students, are you listening to me or do you hear me? Every now and then a kid would go, what's the difference? I got you.
That's one of my favorite lines from White Men Can't Jump.
Fantastic movie. I love it.
You was with Jimi Hendrix. You don't hear Jimmy.
You can't hear Jimmy.
You can listen to him, but you can't hear him.
Oh my God. Yes.
And it's so true, though. It really is true. Like you were saying, you've got a class full of students. Are they listening or are they hearing?
That is a great line. You know, it's funny that you said it, and again, you would not know. My friend from Italy is white, and we joke because he is a fan. He loves R&B, old poetry, and he loves the last poets. And what's funny is I always joke with him. I said, now, you know, somebody wouldn't know how to take if they heard you listening to Niggers on the Moon. And I said, unless you heard that poem, he said, yeah, sometimes I played that when I'm out having cappuccino, and I've had people look at me like, do you know you're white? And he kind of laughed because he's like, and he's a gigantic 60s music aficionado. But he says the reason why he loves it is because it spoke to the pain more so than the color. But it was the color of the person that was creating the music that allowed you to see that you couldn't have seen on your own. So you couldn't separate the two. But if you really listen past the initial, he's speaking about pain that we all have to deal with. And again, and him and I talk about that all the time, that you would never, if just looking at him, you would never think that that was something that's in his repertoire.
As somebody in the publishing business, you don't judge a book by its cover.
Exactly. But if we could get folks to take that into consideration, because that's where the fix is. That's where you hear me when I give my hashtag, we can fix it. Because I say it's a matter of understanding that we can come together and fix all the problems that we have. But are we willing to actually do that? Often people talk it, but they don't really want to fix what's wrong.
We all need to make sacrifices.
Amen. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
To your football analogy before I next question is,
Sure.
Is Vince Lombardi. One of my favorite Vince Lombardi quotes is, "We didn't lose today. We ran out of time."
There you go. Oh my gosh, I love that. I say that to kids when I'm coaching them. I always say, don't let somebody beat you twice. Hold your head up. We ran out of time today. They got lucky. Hold your head up. Don't let them see you upset, because then they're going to beat you twice. They just got to the finish line for us. Don't stress. I love that quote. Yes.
Well, I always tell my son, because he plays both baseball and hockey, and times where, oh, the ref made this call, or it's like, you know what? Just tell your team to score more goals, get more runs. You won't have to worry about referees and umpires.
So true.
Just shut up and play the game.
Great info. If not close, the ref can't steal it from you.
Exactly. So I want to talk about, did you move everything to YouTube for your 3 times a week, your show?
No, actually, believe it or not, I moved it to a private Facebook group. I upload the videos once I download them. I'm moving at a little slower pace now than I was when I was using Restream. Restream would do it for me, but I found that the platform was not very solid, because sometimes I would just lose audio, and a couple of times it happened on some real good shows. And I said, you know what? I'm not dealing with this. I'll cut out Periscope, which I hated, but I had to make a decision. So I have a private group, Unapologetically Keith, and that's the only place that you can see my shows. And the reason why I did that was that I found that the Facebook algorithm was only going to let me reach a handful of people anyway. But by moving folks into a private group, I have over 80 people that joined in 1 week. It's 81 now. And I show my videos there, and then I upload them to YouTube. Once I download them, I upload them to YouTube. And so those are the 2 places that you can see them, and that's it. And the reason why was that I wanted to limit trying to chase down all these different social media sites. I figured, what tool am I going to use? And then the other ones I kind of just use as an offshoot. Like, I'll post on Instagram every day, and then I post on my business page now on Facebook. But I don't chase LinkedIn. If I upload, I'll upload, but it's not something I do religiously, simply because I don't try to be everywhere at all times, because it's too tiresome, and I wasn't seeing any results. And that's been my biggest thing, is where has my biggest results come from? Well, I want the stuff saved on YouTube, because I know people like to search there, and I've seen the subscriptions go up. But Facebook is my home in terms of what I plan on using, and that's where you can see my shows. The 3 times a week is there. I do make note of it on Instagram. I let folks know where they can come. Now, if they want to join, they got to join to be able to see the shows.
Talk about what's the show all about?
Unapologetically Keith is just simply, it's really an extension of like what you see from my post in the morning. It's just, I cover different subjects. Like I did 5 shows on domestic violence, and that was in actually 6. So we did 2 weeks worth of domestic violence, where sometimes I I will cover a subject where I'll just give particular points. Sometimes I'll talk about why are men no longer romantic. I deal with things that create crisis or things that are already a crisis, but it's just really an open conversation for the hour. And the biggest thing goes down in the chat room. The folks in the chat room be having a ball. Sometimes I got to remember I'm doing a show. I be trying to read all the stuff in the chat room, and like I'm there, and I got to remember I'm actually doing a show. But it's just, my wife and I used to do a radio show where we talked about relationships. But me, it's just covering who I am in terms of how I deal with people, how I deal with certain subjects. But it's all connected to what can create a crisis, or I think what did we do yesterday was when you got to cut a family member loose, what that looks like. And I gave some transparency on, what I've had to remove myself from certain family members. So I try to have a conversation that somebody sitting there goes, yeah, I feel that same way. We talked about cheating, had a conversation with that on the day my wife and I had our 13th anniversary. We talked about how you can overcome cheating to get to a point of having a happy marriage. We did Cardi B, and I did Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion's song WAP. And please don't ask me what WAP means. You have to look it up. It's disgusting. But at the end of the day, it was, let's have this conversation, because I had a problem with any song that's going to lead kids into a negative place. But I wasn't going to judge Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion, because Millie Jackson was just as nasty, and a lot of other men are just as nasty in the past. We tend to point fingers, forgetting that Red Fox used to do all dirty albums. These are the
Yes,
things,
he did.
and these are the things that we need to have conversations about. But I'll discuss anything that I think is going to put people in a bad place emotionally, physically, or spiritually. And again, the show is called Unapologetically Keith, because I don't apologize for how I see the world. If you don't rock with me, that's cool. That's what the delete button is for. And I don't get offended if you delete me, because I won't know until I click on your page and see add friend. And I go, oh, okay, keep it moving.
Well, it's like when I take Otis to the dog park. I just say, Otis, not everybody wants to see you.
There you go. There you go. That's so true.
Let's talk about the book publishing company. So if you are, and I'm sure we have some listeners out there who want to publish, what's your process as far as somebody that wants to self-publish?
Okay. I am Bravin Publishing is a small publishing company that is a literary service provider. So what my wife and I do is we provide the services that an author needs to be able to self-publish. We take your book from concept on your computer to help you to the point of having it physically printed, and you have control all of that. And what we do is we walk through that. So all the services that you need are out front. They're listed. You know what you're paying for. And when it's all done, you now have placed yourself in a position where you have your books. You can print off as many books as you want. You have print on demand. You can drop ship if you choose to. And then the hard work is on you. We will make sure that your book is professionally done. We will make sure that you have everything that you need, your ISBN number, your Library of Congress number. We'll make sure that your copyright is in place. The copyright does not come to my company. It is mailed directly to you, or it's filed. I will give you the receipt for the upload, that you will see that your book is with the U.S. Copyright Office. And we just provide those services. We used to provide the marketing and promotional materials, but it started to get too hectic, and we don't deal with anybody's royalties. So your book is not sold by my publishing company. Your book is sold by you. All you do with me is, after we complete it, if you need to order X amount of books, you simply give me a call. Hey, Keith, I need to order 100 books. I send you an invoice, and those 100 books are sent to you. Or if you want to use drop shipping, where do you want them to send to? And that's it. That's the only bridge that we still have after we're done, because we want to make sure that an author has the complete rights to everything that's going on. We make sure that we get a per book cost that's reasonable, anywhere between $4 and $6. That's another mistake that a lot of self-published authors make, is they go out here and they want to put it on Kindle, and they want to get on Amazon, or they cut these other deals, and they're paying $9 and $10 per book. So now they have to charge $20, $22, $25 per book, and wonder why they're not selling the book. We keep it between $4 and $6 by making only, say, $1 or $1.50 per book. and leave the author to make everything else, because why should I have my hands in your pocket for anything more than that when you still have the burden of trying to sell your book? Some publishers want to hold you hostage because they want to take as much as they can. We're a faith-based company, so I don't do that. And I put all my prices on my website so an author can count their coins and figure out what they're going to need to be able to move forward, as well as they're always in contact with me. And I work on referrals now. I just don't have random people go, hey, could you publish my book? No. I work on, unless we have to sit down and have a conversation so you can understand, because I'm hard to work with, because if you got to be focused on what you're trying to do with your book. So we'll sit down and have a conversation beforehand, because we may not be the company for you. I also do literary consultant work where I sit with authors who may now want to get back into the field. And my biggest question is, what's your hustle factor? And they go, what do you mean? What's your hustle factor? Meaning, what energy or money have you put to the side that you're prepared to put into your book? Because if not, printing out 2,000, 1,000 books, 200 books, 100 books, and you don't know how you're going to sell them, you're wasting money. And I could gladly take your money, but that doesn't make sense to me. And I've had other publishers get mad at me for, one, putting out information that they're charging for, two, having my prices listed on my website, because people will say, well, why is he charging this, but you're charging me so much more? I said, I can't speak for what anybody else is doing. This is what I do. And it's been successful. We've been here since 2010. But what I found is that, they say honesty is the best policy, but it really does make things easier for me. I don't have to stress when I say, go to my website, it's right there. And the Q&A is there too. And by working on referrals, people who have enjoyed our services, they already tell folks, look, don't play games. If you're gonna be serious, then he's ready to go. But if not, don't waste his time. And it's worked out.
You are a man of many talents there.
I try.
Before I ask you the last question, Keith,
Sure.
How can the listeners get a hold of you?
Okay. Well, they can find me on all social media platforms, Keith KL Belvin. I kind of tried to make it easier for people to be able to contact me. Facebook, author Keith KL Belvin, but it's easy. I'm everywhere. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. My email address is, if it's publishing, it's main office at bravinpublishing.com. That's BRAVIN publishing.com. If they're interested in what I do as a crisis specialist, which is my latest business, but it's actually my main focus, that is the best way is bit.ly/Coach Keith. And you just reach out and you sign up for a free discovery call, and then we could get in touch with each other. And my email is info@Bravin Consultants. That's BRAVIN Consultants.com. And that's the two ways that you can reach me. And I would always tell folks, schedule the discovery call with me. It's free, because if I'm not the person to work with you, I'm not going to try to fit a round peg into a square hole. It's not going to work. And I have no problem with saying I'm not the person for you, but I will try to find who is, because I love when other people do well. So that's how you reach me. And especially on Instagram in the mornings, I try to put a video up every morning. I try to be as consistent to get it through between 9 and 11. Every now and then I'm a little late, and I put it before the afternoon. And on Facebook, the Unapologetically Keith is the group that you have to join to be able to see my show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9:30 to 10:30, as well as I have a Bible study group, which is Seek His Face Bible Study Group, for folks who want to be able to learn about the Bible without the pressures of somebody bearing down on them saying, how come you didn't post and how come you didn't read this? We don't do all that. I give you the information each week, and you decide how that works for you. And if you want to have a conversation, I'm here to do that as well. So that's the best way to reach me.
What has changed for you the past 12 months?
I came to the realization that I needed a coach, because as you heard Glenn say, I had so many things, so many irons on the fire, that I was not getting the food cooked, or I was overcooking it, or I was burning it. Meaning that so I had to say, okay, let me settle down. And what's really changed for me was that I've really moved everything into one thing. I think the good thing, like Glenn and I have known each other since 2015, 5 years, but it was really settling down and saying, I'm finally going to pay for a coach that I feel comfortable with. I've been around a ton of coaches. I've done a ton of research, but I felt comfortable enough that I could sit over in the passenger side and say, here, Glenn, you drive, and I'm going to bite my nails and just learn the best I can, because it's hard for me. But that's what's changed. It's just the idea that I needed to change some systems to be more successful. I thought I've been successful, but when you keep hearing people say, you know, you could do so much more, you could do this, you could do that, and you go, really? I had to really buckle down and say, let me see what that looks like. And so here I am.
Well, Keith, this has been a blast. I'm so happy we connected through,
Sure.
Glenn, and I'm so happy that in this short time, I'm going to speak for myself. I think we've really built a good, hopefully lasting relationship.
Yes. I feel that way, and I appreciate it. And I thank you, because it reiterates why we come to the table to try to get assistance, because by making the move to say, okay, Glenn, help me, we were able to connect, and here we are. So we're helping each other's business. And I think that's the part that God is speaking to me, that let other folks in and you can go other places. And I'm being patient. And so I definitely feel the same way. And I appreciate you taking the time to even reach out and allow me into your arena. And I hope that I brought some quality to it.